As the first light of dawn filters through the branches of pine and oak, smoke begins to curl from the thatched rooftops of a Native American village. The day has already begun, not with alarms or digital reminders, but with the quiet rhythms of nature. Birds announce the rising sun, and children stir beside hearths that still glow faintly from the night before. Before any chores are assigned or tools lifted, there is a moment of pause, a prayer, or a greeting to the land itself. For many Native nations, each morning was not just a new start, but a renewal of spiritual and physical relationships with the earth. Native American life was incredibly diverse, reflecting the vast range of climates and ecosystems across North America. From the forests of the Northeast to the deserts of the Southwest, the plains of the Midwest, and the coastal shores of the Pacific. Despite these variations, a deep connection to land, community, and spiritual practice formed the common fabric of daily life. Each region shaped how people gathered food, built homes, and structured their societies. But no matter the location, the day was filled with intentional work, strong community ties, and a rhythm tied closely to the seasons. In many agricultural societies, like the Haudenosaunee, Iroquois, or the Mississippian cultures, mornings were spent tending to crops. Women, who were often the primary agriculturalists, walked rows of corn, beans, and squash. The three sisters, checking for pests, weeding, or harvesting when in season. These weren't just farming tasks, but acts of ceremony and stewardship. Every action had meaning, often guided by oral teachings passed through generations. Elsewhere, in nomadic or semi-nomadic societies such as the Lakota or Apache, early morning might mean breaking camp, scouting for game, or preparing for travel. Each group adapted to its unique environment with deep knowledge and skill. But even in the busiest mornings, life wasn't rushed. Time was viewed as cyclical, not linear, and the pace of the day flowed with purpose rather than pressure. Children learned by watching and participating, elders offered guidance and stories, and every task, whether simple or complex, had value. So what did Native Americans actually do all day? They lived with purpose and patience, shaping a world in tune with natural forces and community needs. As the morning sun climbed higher, the day's many roles, hunter, farmer, healer, weaver, protector, began to unfold, each action reflecting thousands of years of knowledge passed hand to hand, story to story. By mid-morning, the village hums with purposeful activity. In the woodlands, men quietly prepare for the hunt, checking their bows, tightening sinew, and sharing strategies for tracking deer, elk, or even smaller game like rabbits and wild turkeys. Their knowledge of animal behavior, migration routes, and wind patterns rivals that of any modern naturalist. Hunting wasn't about brute strength, it was about patience, respect, and relationship. A successful hunt could feed families for days, and the event itself was often marked with gratitude, songs, or offerings to ensure balance was maintained. Meanwhile, women and children fan out into the surrounding area to gather wild plants, roots, nuts, and berries. This wasn't simple foraging. It was ecological mastery. Generations of observation taught them which plants were edible, which had healing properties, and when they reached peak ripeness. In California, acorn processing was a daily staple, requiring careful shelling, leaching, drying, and pounding into meal. In the Southwest, desert plants like agave and mesquite pods were expertly harvested and processed. In the Arctic, Inuit women prepared sea mammals with intense precision. These tasks weren't chores, but vital, often communal events, filled with conversation, laughter, and learning. Tool-making was another central activity, often performed throughout the day between larger tasks. In the Great Plains, flint knapping turned raw stone into arrowheads and scrapers. Along the Pacific Northwest, master carvers shaped cedar into canoes, masks, and totem poles using specialized tools of bone and stone. In colder regions, waterproof clothing was sewn from animal intestines, and snow goggles carved from bone helped reduce sun glare on ice. Even basketry, pottery, and weaving weren't just utilitarian. They were expressions of identity, often adorned with intricate patterns that told stories or reflected the natural world. These daily tasks weren't isolated from the sacred. They were embedded within it. There was no firm divide between spiritual and material life. Whether you were scraping a hide, planting corn, or shaping a fishhook, you were participating in a cycle of respect and reciprocity. This integration of skill, intention, and meaning is what gave daily Native American life its depth and cohesion. Every action had a purpose, every purpose a lesson, and every lesson a place in the larger story of the people. As the sun climbed toward its peak, daily life in Native American communities shifted into a rhythm shaped by place, season, and tradition. Across the continent, people built dwellings tailored to their environments. In the forests of the Northeast, longhouses stretched over packed earth floors, sheltering extended families beneath bark-covered frames. On the plains, nomadic tribes lived in teepees, ingeniously designed conical tents made of buffalo hides and wooden poles, perfect for fast assembly and takedown. In the Southwest, the Puebloans built multi-story adobe structures that hugged canyon walls, offering cool interiors during searing days and shared living spaces that fostered communal life. Home maintenance was a regular part of the daily routine. Women might patch hides, sweep floors, repair thatching, or tend to cooking fires, while men mended tools or reinforced structural supports. Children played nearby, but often they weren't idle. They watched and mimicked adult behaviors, learning by doing. Small children carried water, gathered firewood, or helped chase off birds from planted fields. Elderly members, too, played essential roles, offering stories, songs, wisdom, and advice. Age was not a barrier to relevance. It was the key to leadership and legacy. The home wasn't just a shelter, but a hub of teaching, storytelling, and multi-generational learning. Beyond individual homes, village life thrived. Communal spaces were busy with conversations, ceremonies, and cooperation. Tasks were shared. If a hunter returned with game, it wasn't just for his own household. It was divided according to need and tradition. In many tribes, the concept of private ownership was secondary to well-being. In the Pacific Northwest, potlatch feasts celebrated this value, giving away wealth to honor guests and strengthen bonds. On the Great Plains, tribes formed temporary encampments during buffalo hunts, working in coordinated teams. In the Southeast, mound-building societies organized labor for massive public projects, testaments to planning, leadership, and social cohesion. Midday often brought a pause. Meals were shared communally. Corn, beans, and squash, the three sisters, might simmer in clay pots over open fires, flavored with wild herbs or dried meats. In winter lodges or summer shade structures, people gathered, exchanged news, and shared stories. The line between work and rest wasn't sharp. Much of daily life flowed together, filled with moments of laughter, quiet, and connection. There was time to sharpen a blade, mend a net, braid hair, or teach a child the story behind the stars. These were not people racing through life. They moved in rhythm with the land and with each other. By the afternoon, much of the day's work turned toward creation. Tools, clothing, containers, and art were not merely utilitarian, but deeply expressive. Native American societies across the continent developed complex technologies suited to their environments. In the Arctic, Inuit hunters shaped harpoons from bone and fashioned goggles from driftwood to reduce glare on ice. In the Southwest, the Hohokam built elaborate irrigation canals stretching for miles, engineering that turned desert soil into fertile farmland. Eastern woodland tribes crafted birch bark canoes so light and agile that early European explorers were astonished by their elegance and speed. These tools weren't copied mindlessly. They were the result of accumulated wisdom passed down through generations. Craftsmanship was a communal art. Women tanned hides, smoothed them with bone scrapers, and transformed them into clothing, moccasins, or shelter coverings. Men knapped arrowheads from obsidian or flint, shaped bows from hickory, or carved pipes from soft stone. Young people learned by doing, watching every movement, mimicking every cut and stitch. Tools weren't just made, they were cared for, repaired, and understood. Every item had value. Baskets woven from willow or pine needles were not only containers for seeds or berries, they were often decorated with patterns that told stories or marked identity. Function and beauty were never separate concepts. They were intertwined. Art and symbolism flowed naturally into everyday life. Pottery from the ancestral Puebloans featured intricate black-on-white designs that may have carried spiritual meaning. The Lakota painted teepees with animals, dreams, or battle scenes. Visual storytelling on the very fabric of daily life. Quill work and later beadwork adorned clothing, not only to please the eye, but to reflect personal and cultural identity. Even tools might be carved with designs representing clan lineage or sacred symbols. The line between the practical and the spiritual was thin. A fishing net was more than a net. It was the result of patience, knowledge, and intention, made strong by technique and meaning. As the shadows lengthened, these objects would begin to accumulate again, repaired, repurposed, or created anew. There was no factory, no assembly line. From a child's toy to a chief's war club was made by hand, with thought and care. The work of the day wasn't just survival, it was expression, connection, and storytelling through craft. These were not people barely scraping by. They were inventors, engineers, and artists whose tools were adapted, refined, and honored for thousands of years. The afternoon wasn't idle. It was a time for creation, a quiet rhythm of hands shaping the world. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, Native American communities transitioned into evening routines. But this time was never just about rest. It was also the heart of community life. Time to gather, reflect, teach, and connect. Unlike the fast pace of modern life, many Native American cultures were built on rhythms that followed the land and the seasons. Evenings were when elders told stories by firelight, passing on not only history, but moral lessons, tribal identity, and spiritual truths. These stories were living traditions, evolving yet anchored in memory. Children didn't learn from textbooks. They learned from voice, gesture, and metaphor, often while helping with food preparation, mending clothes, or grinding maize. Ceremonial life was not confined to special days. It wove through everyday activities. The tending of a garden could be a prayer. The gathering of herbs might involve songs or ritual thanks. In some cultures, such as the Hopi and Zuni, specific dances were performed in alignment with planting or harvesting seasons, believed to maintain harmony between humans and the spirit world. The Lakota practiced smudging, burning sage or sweetgrass to cleanse spaces of negative energy. Before hunts or important decisions, among the Iroquois, councils held in the evening might begin with the Thanksgiving address, a verbal offering of gratitude to the natural world. These spiritual acts were not separate from daily life. They were deeply embedded within it. Even the very structures people gathered in reflected social and spiritual organization. Longhouses of the Iroquois were shared by multiple families and represented the matrilineal nature of their society. The circular shape of the plains teepee symbolized the sacred hoop, the circle of life, seasons, and balance. Pueblo kivas, underground ceremonial chambers, were entered through a hole in the roof, symbolizing emergence from the underworld. Where people sat, how they addressed one another, and the way discussions were held were shaped by unwritten protocols that honored age, wisdom, and kinship. Respect and consensus were not ideals. They were practices lived daily in these evening gatherings. As night descended, the sky overhead was not a blank void. It was a living map. Stars guided migration, agriculture, and ceremony. The Blackfoot read the stars like a calendar, while the Chumash of California tracked celestial cycles to plan fishing expeditions. Among the Navajo, constellations had names, stories, and spiritual meaning. The night sky was both clock and scripture. Daily life, far from mundane, was saturated with meaning. Each hour an opportunity to strengthen bonds, honor ancestors, and live in rhythm with a world that was seen not as a resource to exploit, but a relative to respect. Evening was not an ending. It was a return to the heart of native life. While survival tasks filled much of the day, Native Americans also carved out time for expression, creation, and the continuation of cultural identity through art. But unlike the modern notion of art as decoration or commodity, their artistic expressions were functional, symbolic, and deeply spiritual. Pottery wasn't just for storing food. It was painted with designs that told stories of ancestry, migration, and belief. A beaded garment didn't merely signify status or beauty. It often communicated tribal identity, achievements, or clan affiliations. Each material, shell, bone, turquoise, porcupine quill, was chosen with purpose and infused with meaning. Every act of creation was, in many ways, a dialogue with nature and the ancestors. Craftwork was integrated into daily tasks. Women might tan hides or weave baskets while talking with others or watching over children. Men might carve tools, flutes, or ceremonial pipes as part of preparing for seasonal rites. Among the ancestral Puebloans, geometric designs on textiles and pottery held meanings still debated today, possibly connected to astronomy, fertility, or social organization. Inuit carving, often in ivory or bone, portrayed animals with a level of precision and reverence that reflected their intimate knowledge of the Arctic world. Across the Americas, artistic creation was both a shared labor and a sacred act, a way of remembering, honoring, and surviving. Music and dance also played essential roles in the daily and ceremonial lives of many native peoples. Drums were not simply instruments, they were considered the heartbeat of Mother Earth. Flutes, rattles, and vocals carried stories, emotions, and prayers. Songs were passed down orally, each with specific times, purposes, and protocols. A single chant might only be sung during a harvest, a birth, or a mourning period. Dance was not just performance, it was participation in the cycles of nature. The ghost dance of the Plains tribes was a spiritual resistance movement, while the green corn dances of the Southeast tribes marked agricultural renewal and gratitude. These expressions weren't occasional diversions, they were as vital as food and fire. They preserved memory, fostered identity, and provided psychological and spiritual balance. In crafting, singing, and painting, Native peoples connected themselves to the land, their ancestors, and the future generations. The artistic output of a tribe was not the work of a few, but the woven voice of the many. Whether through a painted buffalo robe, a sand painting in a healing ceremony, or a carefully stitched moccasin, art was not separate from daily life. It was its heartbeat. Through it, Native Americans spoke the language of the land, of time, and of the spirit. Contrary to the myth of isolated tribal life, Native American communities were often deeply connected to others through extensive networks of trade, diplomacy, and migration. These connections weren't occasional. Many Native peoples spent part of their day engaging in or preparing for trade and travel. Trade routes crisscrossed the continent long before European arrival. Along these paths, people exchanged not only goods, but also ideas, technologies, languages, and spiritual practices. Obsidian from the west made its way to the east. Seashells from the Gulf Coast were found in the plains. This movement of material and culture bound different tribes together in complex relationships that shaped daily life. Marketplaces and seasonal gatherings were vital hubs of activity. At these events, baskets were traded for pottery, dried meat for turquoise, medicinal herbs for decorative feathers. But trade was more than commerce. It was a way to forge alliances, find marriage partners, and resolve disputes. Daily preparations for trade might involve crafting goods, harvesting valued items like wild tobacco or salt, or organizing travel parties. Among the Mississippians, vast cities like Cahokia served as regional centers of trade, attracting thousands during festivals and rituals. These moments provided opportunities for storytelling, competition, diplomacy, and celebration.